This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and here's something that I normally consider a dirty word. This is a more recent Crosley record player. Well, I say more recent. It's probably about 10 years old. There's no date on it, but I know this is one of the earlier ones. It's a model CR49. Normally, I don't even bother with crap like this, but this one was cheap, and I figured, what the heck, I'll get it and play around with it. I might can improve upon it and make it a little better. I know that's like polishing a turd, but if we learn something from this, then maybe I can pass it along to people who own these who might want to make them better. This thing actually works to some degree, but it does need some work done to it. Now, one of the things I don't like about these record players is the fact that it's a 3-speed, 33, 45, and 78, but they only give you a cartridge with an LP tip, which is not sufficient for playing 78s. I don't know why they didn't install a cartridge with a flip-over stylus like they had a long time ago, but yeah, I know why, because it cost a little less money to put this cartridge in here. Well, anyway, recently I noticed on the internet that there's a new cartridge out. It's called a BAMPA, B-A-M-P-A, I believe, or B-A-N-P-A. Just look on eBay, you can find it. It looks very similar to one of these Chuo-Denshi cartridges like what's in here, only it has a flip-over stylus, one side for LP, one side for 78. And the reviews from some of the record player people say that the 78 side is not an actual 78 tip, it's actually a sapphire LP tip, but the needle is identical to ones used in some of the old BSR cartridges, and genuine LP and 78 versions of that needle are available. So I have one of those cartridges ordered, and we're going to install it in here and see how it does. But while we're waiting on that cartridge to get here, we'll just evaluate the other issues this thing has. First off, the auto stop mechanism doesn't work. I don't know whether somebody disabled it or whether it broke on its own, but normally these are started by cocking the tone arm back to the right, and then when the tone arm gets to the end of the record, it'll shut off. But as you can see, it's not doing that on this one, which is fine. If it's broke or disabled, I'm probably just going to leave it that way, because if you happen to be playing certain older 78s or kiddie records, especially the smaller ones where the grooves go further than normal into the record, the auto stop feature would shut the machine off before the record finished. So the way it is now, it'll play a record all the way through, and I mean, you don't really need the auto cut-off feature, because I mean, it cuts off when you turn the machine off. So we can tell that this thing is not very well shielded, because when I bring my hand close to it, you can hear the hum increase from the speakers. As far as sound quality goes, it sounds better than the other Crosleys, such as the Crosley Cruiser and the other little smaller ones. But, you know, it still doesn't have the sound quality that some of the better, older consumer models had. But we're going to try to do something about that. And here's the other problem that a lot of these suffer from, the 12-volt DC input jack. Yes, these run off of a wall wart. Just a little cheap switch mode power supply. Or you could buy a 12-volt car cord and take it on the road with you, but these DC input jacks, the cheap mounting studs on the jack are bad about breaking off, and that's what's happened here. And you can see the result here. Now the best way I found to fix that problem is to drill small holes in the jack, and then bolt the jack to the case itself, and then there shouldn't be any more problems out of it. It'll be sturdier than it ever was from the factory. Alright, let's open this up and have a look at the inside. Okay, here we are opened up, and as soon as I opened it, I could detect the odor of Chinesium 666, and we see they used plenty of Chinese ejaculatory fluid here to hold the wires in place. Here's our linkage for the auto stop mechanism, and one of the plastic pieces that broke off and was laying down inside of the cabinet, which I don't care, like I said, be fine with me if that's disabled anyway. Yeah, the speakers are nothing to write home about, but they're certainly bigger than what's in the Crosley Cruiser. The ones in the Crosley Cruiser are about 1.5, 2 inches big, and they sound worse than a AM pocket transistor radio from the 60s. Here's our little amplifier board, which is just a IC-based amplifier. Okay, here's the amplifier. It uses that one little IC there for the audio, and there are 3 transistors on here. I'm not sure what their purpose is, but I have an idea that they probably have something to do with the motor control. There's no schematic on this thing. There probably never was a schematic, and there probably never will be a schematic. And as you can see, there's more of that fluid that we talked about earlier, and it looks like a blob of solder splashed on that capacitor right there. So you have very high quality construction here. Okay, looking at the amplifier, I didn't see a whole lot I could do to it. It seemed to already have a high input impedance according to my ohm meter checks, and that's what you need for a ceramic cartridge. I know some of the more tinny sounding ones have a low input impedance. That's the reason they sound like crap. Resoldered the wires to our power plug here and ran heat shrink tubing over them to kind of give them a little bit more stability. And now we're ready to bolt the jack to our cabinet, and then that problem ought to be fixed. Okay, we have our power input jack securely bolted in place. That's a better fit than it ever was from the factory. In fact, here are the 2 little plastic studs that were holding the original jack on, or holding the jack on originally. You can see they just broke off. And this plastic, for whatever reason, it's not very sturdy. And when it gets old, it gets even more brittle and breaks off, and then that's all she wrote. Like I said, this should be good to go for a very long time. Here we are playing a 78, and it really plays pretty good considering I'm using an LP Stylus and this record is worn out. But at least we know the speed is running consistent. One of the problems with these is inconsistent speed, and that's usually either a belt that's on its way out or a motor that's on its way out, but this one seems to be okay. In fact, I really get the impression this one wasn't used very much. When I got it, the needle guard was even still on it. So, yeah, I think this one probably just wasn't used much at all. Alright, when the cartridge gets in, we'll install that and see what that does for it. Okay, another problem these have is running too fast. And that's the way they're set from the factory for whatever reason. So we have our strobe disc on the turntable and our little neon bulb here that I use, and it's definitely running faster than normal on both 33 and 45. But fortunately there's a way to correct that. There's a couple of pots on the motor that you can adjust to get the speed right. And it's a trial and error process. You just adjust each one until you get the speed proper. And here they are. I'm not sure which one's 33 and 45. The pot on the connector board is for 78, I believe. So we just have to adjust each pot until we find the correct one. Okay, we have everything set. The bottom hole on the motor is 45. The top one is 33. The one on the circuit board is 78. Okay, our new cartridge has arrived. It's a Banpa, and It looks basically just like the old cartridge, except it has a flip-over stylus. Now, it's no problem to replace it. Just carefully unclip the old cartridge, carefully remove the plugs, and plug them onto the new cartridge, clip it in, and we ought to be ready to go. And here's an example of more Chinese garbage. Here's the old cartridge. And trying to get the connector pins off, which are very tight. It seems like when I want them to come off, you can't get them off. When I want them to stay on the cartridge, they're so loose they fall off. Well, anyway, as you can see, one of the pins broke off of the cartridge. It's stuck like Chuck up in that connector on the white wire there. So yeah, you know, something that's supposed to be so simple ends up turning into a fiasco, but that's nothing new out here. And the shocking thing is, this old cartridge appears to be a genuine Chuo-Denshi cartridge from Japan, not some Chinese knockoff. Usually it's the Chinese knockoffs that have the loose pins that pull out on you, but I thought the Chuo-Denshi cartridges were better quality, but well, no, I guess not. Well, at least I got a good needle I can save off of this one. Okay, we have it installed, and yes, this is one of the needles that's stamped as 78, but it's not really a 78, it's a dual LP. We're on the 78 side. Son of the sun, we'll have big fun on the bayou. You hear the amount of noise. Flip it over. And it's the same amount of noise, so that's not going to work. And we have another problem. This is a styrene 45. That's the cheap injection molded crap that Columbia started using in the early 50s, and then a lot of other manufacturers followed suit. Styrene 45 can sound very good if it's in mint condition and played on a nice turntable, but styrene is the most unforgiving when it comes to bad needles, bad incorrect tracking pressure, or any other defect with a tone arm. And unfortunately, we have a problem here. This is not very styrene friendly at all. You hear the hissing, and that ain't just the record. I tried it on several different records, and it does the same thing. So, we have a genuine fan steel needle coming that's supposed to be for the BSR cartridges that are actually supposed to fit this cartridge, and we'll try that needle when it gets here, hopefully in today's mail, and see what happens. Now, the post office says it's supposed to be delivered today, but we all know how the post office is. They charge the most money for their services, and they don't often get in any hurry. Okay, we're checking our tracking pressure, and it's higher than what I think it should be. 6.8, that's close enough to 7 grams, so we need to come up with some kind of counterweight to get that down, and that might help the styrene wrecking problem. Well, that makes a nice counterweight, don't it? Well, any rate, it got our tracking pressure down to 4.2. I can live with that, but obviously we can't have that sitting on the back of the tone arm, so I'm going to have to look under the tone arm and see if there's a place to add a counterbalance spring. I don't think there is. And if there's not, I'm just going to have to do something that's going to look a little tacky and drill a hole in the back of the tone arm, stick a bolt in there, and add a bunch of washers on it to make up a counterweight. Okay, the post office did something miraculous and delivered everything they were supposed to do. Here are the two needles. The one on the left is the fan steel replacement for the BSR cartridge. The one on the right is the Chinese job. They both look just alike, except the fan steel cartridge has a little bit longer cantilever, which means it'll have a little bit lower output and track lighter, so we'll definitely need to lighten this tone arm some way or another. But this one should have the correct 0.7 mil LP and 3 mil 78 tip on it. Okay, we have the tone arm removed, and the way you do that is loosen the screw on that little white plastic thingy that activates the former auto stop mechanism, and then you pinch together the little tabs on the tone arm, and the tone arm will just slip out. There is actually a counterbalance spring under here, but it's so small it's really not doing a whole lot. So what I'm going to have to do is, this hole is, there's too much stuff in the way. I'm going to have to put another hole here and put a bolt on the end of the tone arm, and then we'll put some nuts or washers or whatever we can find on there to counterbalance the tone arm. I want to try to get this down to about 3 grams if I can, 3 to 4 grams. Okay, I know this looks a little tacky, but we've acquired the desired result. We have a bolt on the end of the tone arm and some washers. Actually, these are the old things that you found on the bottom of old all-in-one stereos from the 70s to help secure the whole thing together, the little things that stuck into the bottom of the wood cabinet. Well, you know what I'm talking about, even though if I can't get the terminology right. Alright, let's check our tracking pressure and see what we've got now. 3.1 grams, that's more like it. And we've installed the fan steel stylus, so let's put the platter back on and see what happens. And by the way, I went ahead and ordered a belt for this. I've used this guy before. He's on eBay. Vintage audio for U2. And this is a PRB belt, which is better quality than the Chinese crap that came on this. And there's his website, www.audioturntablepro.com. And the email is bob31411@msn.com should you need to contact him. And the way you replace a belt on one of these is first you put the belt around the inner rim like this, making sure it's not twisted. And then you'll stretch the belt and hook it to this little hook here. And then you'll place the platter over the spindle so that the belt will slide over the motor pulley and then work it back and forth. And then it will come unhooked from this little hook here and stay on the motor pulley like it's supposed to. Yeah, just like that. And then you rotate a few times and you'll hear the belt snap when it comes off with the hook. And I know it's on the motor because one thing about these Crosleys, they have their own self-contained generator. If you don't have power, you just put a record on and spin it by hand and it will play it. Notice the light coming on, and I do not have the AC power connected. Okay, there we are. Alright, there we are playing some styrene, and we do not appear to be gouging the record, so that's a good thing. Now let's try 78.
You're just trying to find the best deal in town. You give away your...
Alright, let's flip it back to the LP side.
Kisses, but you never give your heart.
And you can definitely tell the difference. So this actually has the correct tip on the 78 side. Okay, there we are with an LP. Sounds pretty good. I don't like the amplifier hum. That's just from a poorly designed amp. It's not shielded correctly, and there's really nothing I can do about that. If I could see a schematic for this amplifier, I might could do something, but I'm not in the mood to take it to the point of where I'm going to try to draw a schematic for this. And since I've already mentioned that a schematic for this likely doesn't exist, then I'd say we've done about all we can do to this. It's much better than it was whenever it came from the factory as far as tracking pressure and having a more correct cartridge in it. Okay, there you go. That's about all I can do to this one. Next time we'll get to something a little more vintage, but I just wanted to, mainly just did this just to see if I could do it, and I did it, so this may wind up on eBay too. In fact, yeah, I think it will wind up on eBay. Just look for a link in the description.